Gaudy. Gaudy stacks. Gaudy stacks. Good God, that's Gaudy. Welcome to Gaudy Stacks.
With Ben Simmons.
What's on the menu, Benny boy?
What's on the menu? What's on the menu? I'll tell you what's on the menu. Dirk. Oh, he's Dirkenstein. Oh my God. I've lost my mind, man. Dirk and his career accomplishments have made me go insane. And you know who helped me get there? My friend Samuelson. We talked about Dirk for over an hour and a half. We discussed him. We laughed. We cried. We sweat. We swat. We shat. No, we didn't do that. I discussed a run-in with Mark Cuban. And we just ran the gamut. You know, the gauntlet. Sam and I both enjoyed Dirk. We have for a long time. You know, Dirk Nash years. Dirk just being Dirk. Dirkenstein. Wolfenstein, great game. Dirk just pulling up from 3 on a fast break. Whew. You know, putting that hand in the cookie jar. That wide stance as he would unleash hell on the rim. Great movie. Rainbow shots. Rainbow almost hit the ceiling of the arena. Just huge arcs. Arcs as far as the eye can see. Man, what a pretty jump shot. Dirk. Fun app. A lot of stats. A lot of consistency and durability. For such a big body. Such a galoot. Bumbling around. Crashing into people. Sweating. Pulling his jersey up a little bit at the free throw line. You know he does that? Kind of pulls up the jersey a little bit. That big old mane of blonde hair. Lion's mane. Right? King of the jungle, Dirk. I feel like I'm in a slam poetry reading right now. I like the guy, okay? I like him. I think it's time for me to get some food because it was a long pod. I'm parched. Throat kind of hurts. Just throaty. Just gutturals. Excitement. It's the Dirk pod. And as I said, good times. I think I'm going to do a smoothie. I've already had lunch, so I'm going to pack it full of bananas. A little bit of reg milk, a little bit of soy milk, maybe a little almond milk, 3 types of milk in your fucking face. And then some frozen banana. And then some frozen strawberries. And then maybe, you know what? Maybe some CBD oil. Put that in there. And maybe some THC oil too. I'm going to get fucked up. You know why? Because Dirk would have wanted me to. I'm going to put different things in my smoothie to give me energy, to give me sustenance, and to fuck me up. And Dirk, this is what Dirk would have wanted. He would have wanted you to not do that and study and like perfect your craft like he did with Holger all those years. So maybe you shouldn't do what you just said you would do. All right, I'm going to think that over, but I am going to have a smoothie because I need it. I need it right now. Okay, I'm spent. I'm going to stop talking right now. No, I'm not. I'm going to keep talking. Sam's coming up. We're going to talk. Here we go. Right now. Thank you.
I am so ready.
Oh, Dirkenstein. Oh my goodness.
I've never been this excited for a Gaudy.
Oh, you know what? Shit, I'm not wearing my Dirk and Nash shirt. Let me put
Dude,
it on.
I wore it yesterday. And realized it was going to be dirty.
Give me 1 second. Give me 1 minute.
Yeah, I actually have. You know what though? I have my other Dirk shirt on. It's Dirk and Luca.
Nice. I gotta get that one too. Oh, all right. Got my Dirk shirt on. Gotta plug my headphones back in here.
I was actually looking at the shirt in the mirror, by the way, and I feel like, I don't know. I mean, could they have made Dirk's hair like a little blonder? Like his hair is like almost like brown. Like
it's true. What's going on? Yeah, it's like black. So the shirt we're wearing is NBA Jam. An NBA Jam. How do I say? It's just a motif. Has a little box with the old Mavs logo, Nash and Dirk, and their skill set, their speed rating, 3-pointers, dunks, and defense. And there's a few things that don't make a lot of sense, like Dirk having really good defense, like a 75% on defense, but
yeah,
maybe
a little high.
Yeah, definitely a little high. But well, shit, man, how have things been going besides combing over Dirk's stats?
Yeah, like it's kind of it's a very strange period. Hopefully
Indeed.
this is an evergreen podcast. But yeah, we're recording this obviously at the end of like week for what is that for us? What is week 7 of quarantine?
Yeah.
You get to a
week
point,
7 matchups were great. Week 7.
right? I mean, you get to a point where like you just kind of are used to it. But yeah, it's definitely strange and not having sports. But I think really what that has done is that has provided some time to kind of go back and look at stuff that has happened. And obviously that's not the same. We wish that there were playoffs going on and new stuff to talk about. But hey, man, I'm happy to go relive this amazing 20-year career.
I know. I was looking as well put, very well put. I was looking at Dirk's stats, his career stats, and the consistency is dare I say Karl Malone-esque. Now that's some would say it's sacrilege, but when you look at Karl Malone's his stats, it's just like 20 points, 10 rebounds basically for many years. I'm actually gonna pull him up right now. Now I obviously Dirk, I feel like Dirk is far better, but like just Karl Malone, like Karl Malone's stats are ridiculous. Like they really are. Like, and that's why I always find myself like trying to find like little holes in people's arguments. Like, oh, Karl Malone, he wasn't good. He was just got force fed by Stockton, and it was the system and all these different things. Because the guy he played like 18 years and he averaged 25 points a game for his career. Karl Malone did. So it's just like the stats are outrageous. But similarly, Dirk has crazy consistency. Over 20 points from 2001 all the way to 2010-11. Or I'm sorry, 2011-12. And his shooting is outrageous. What was the one thing when you were looking over his numbers and just looking over his career that really jumped out at you?
I think what really struck me was just how much better he was in the playoffs when I'm looking at just the numbers across the board, right? So if we compare them, career average 20.7, in the playoffs 25.3. Rebounds 7.5, playoffs 8.5. Rebound assists 2.4. Sorry, these are per game, obviously. 2.4 regular season, 2.5 playoffs.
Yeah.
Drops a little bit with field goal percentage, 47.1. to 46.2. We'll kind of slide past that because that doesn't really help my argument. 38.0 3-point percentage career to 36.5. So a little lower. But then, and this is one that I really found when I was going through box scores to be really remarkable. His free throw percentage goes from 87.9 to 89.2. And that includes a couple of outrageous lines been
94% in 2010-11. Am I seeing that correctly?
Okay, so I didn't go by the entire postseason, but in the Western Conference Finals versus the Thunder in 2011, he shot 96.7% from the line, and in the NBA Finals from the line he was 98.3.
It's just crazy. Like the man was like outrageously clutch. Like, and that 2011 run was just, I know we were texting earlier. I just magical. Like it was so satisfying. I'm an admitted LeBron disliker in terms of like, I mean, I respect his game. I think he's awesome. He's great. And a lot of basketball players are arrogant. You know, like this Michael Jordan documentary is shining light on it's making Michael seem even more amazing than we thought he was, but also like the level of arrogance is just out of control. So a lot of these guys are arrogant, but like that Miami Heat team was so damn arrogant. They were true villains, and they like made fun of Dirk. They acted like, they were doing that fake coughing thing, like
yeah,
and doing all that stuff. And just looking over
their first year together.
Yeah, it was their first year together, so maybe that was an advantage for the Mavs.
Well, but I think that's why that contributed to disliking them even more. It was like fresh hate.
Yeah, it was so fresh. It was so visceral, and I respect the hell of LeBron. Like his career is amazing and everything, but he got punked by Dirk in that finals so hard. Like Dirk's post-up game is just like watching him. Like the full repertoire was on display, and it was meant so much more because, I mean, he came in the league in 98, 99, and then he wins that like 12 years later, roughly. He wins this title. So it's like, you know, he was actually, if you look at his stats, he was kind of like in the tail end or like a little bit past his prime when you look at like his numbers. Now that's just based on his scoring but like it was basically like a make or break. Like the odds of them getting back. So let's say they lose to the Heat. Do you think they come back the next year? Do you think they bring Tyson Chandler and Jason Kidd and all those guys back because they let them walk after they won the title, which is strange. But what do you think?
It's a good question. I think they do, but I also think that, to your point a second ago, I think they caught the Heat at the right time. You know, I don't think if they play that series in 2012 that Dallas wins. So I think they would run it back, but I don't think they'd win. I think they got him at the exact right time. And look, I don't want to be misunderstood. They deserved to win that series. Like they were better than the Heat. Like they didn't catch any breaks. The Heat had not fully gelled, and they were definitely arrogant. And Dallas was just, I mean, one of the things that struck me watching those highlight packages and watching bits of games was just like the ball movement was just unbelievable. And Carlisle had them ready to go, and they had so many open shots. I mean, Jason
Kidd was great.
Yeah.
He was so good for them.
Like the way that Kidd and Terry and Barea all got the ball moving. They had so many open looks for all these guys. You know, Dirk, from what I saw, usually Haslam is on him, just like in the 2006 NBA Finals. Some of the time Bosch is on him. Whenever Bosch is on him, you can kind of see Dirk, like, as soon as he touches the ball, he's like, all right, I'm going to the basket, because he just doesn't think Bosch is quick enough on his feet to stay with him.
It's kind of hilarious, though, because you would think Bosch would be like more athletic than Dirk, but it's weird. Like Dirk's like first step, like his quick, he's got underrated quickness with his first step. Like he had him
Yeah.
off balance a lot of the times. That's something that jumped out at me as well. Like he kind of was scooting past guys that you think they would be able to stay with him, but it was just, man. Another thing I noticed, and I'm so fucking jacked right. I don't know why I'm so pumped up right now. Like I need to calm down a little bit
No, I love it.
because
I think you need to go 2 levels higher than you are right now.
I'm just so jacked because it's Dirk, man, and I just remember like I really watched these playoffs very closely, and like they nobody picked them to win the championship. Like it was
No.
like when you look back, it was such an upset. Like the whole thing, like most people picked the Lakers to beat them
Mhm. Yeah.
in the second round.
The
I think it
Lakers were
was
trying to three-peat.
yeah, and like they just destroyed the Lakers. Like they swept
Swept them.
them.
Yep.
The first game was close, but then the rest of the games was just like they just destroyed them. And they basically killed the Lakers dynasty. The I don't know
Yeah.
if we can go through each round later, but if you look at all the opponents they faced, like they knocked out some really good teams with like
Yep.
all-time players,
Yep.
including the Thunder. The Thunder series was incredible, and Dirk was amazing, including like a 48-point game.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's just list real fast the guys that he beat in the last 3 rounds. He beat
Yeah.
Kobe, Durant, Westbrook, Harden, LeBron, and Dwayne Wade.
Unreal.
I mean,
And
and like you're saying, yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you mentioned the word satisfying, and that's like the perfect word. And part of what made it so satisfying is just the narrative arc of his career made it so unexpected, right? Like I didn't think they were going to win the title at the start of 2011. Did you? At the start of the 2011 postseason? No.
It's really rare if that to happen in the NBA too.
Yeah. I figured, okay, they'll beat the Blazers. The Lakers will do their usual bullshit thing and like, you know, try pretty hard to lose, and then the ball will like bounce off Kobe's shoulder right into Artest's hands.
Oh god, you're talking about 2010, yeah.
Yeah, or whatever, right. Whatever,
never
like
forget that.
whoever's on the, you know, right, a team that was not short on good fortune. We'll leave it at that there. But they just, I mean, Dallas, in the highlight package you sent me, there's a play because they've got Powell on Dirk a lot of the series.
God, he torches
Powell. There's a play where he hits his one-legged, you know, he's got the fall away, and he perfects this mid-range game where he's either facing up or he's posting up, and he can do the kind of turnaround, and it can just be a standard fall away. It can just be shoot up over you. It can be off one leg, and he does off one leg and gets fouled and makes the shot. And Kerr, I didn't even hear any other part of the clip, but you can tell with the way he reacts. You can tell it's Kerr who's calling the game because this is before he's on the Warriors, and it's after he's with the Suns. It's like in that between period, and Kerr when Dirk hits the shot, Kerr just goes, it's Marv Albert, Marv Albert does his yes, and then Kerr goes oh, and like for Kerr to react like that, like Kerr never reacts like that on a shot, but this shot, and that it's like a shot where they're up 8 or 10. And they basically slam the door, right? And as soon as they do that, they go up 2-0, they go back to Dallas, and that's just very clearly a mentally fragile Lakers team. I think Bynum was on that team still, and they just Dallas they beat them, and really from there they don't look back going to the finals. Like you said, Dirk is just unbelievable in the Western Conference Finals. I can give you his stats just for frame of reference. So remember, his career averages are 20.7, 7.5, and 2.4. His playoff averages are 25.3, 8.5, and 2.5. His averages in the Western Conference Finals in 2011 versus the Thunder, 32.2 a game, 5.8 rebounds. So the rebounds are down a little, 2.6. He shoots 57% from the field. 97%
Unreal.
from free throw, only 27% from three, but he really just didn't shoot as many threes in that 2011 playoff run as I thought he did. That was one of the things that surprised me too, was just how often he just accumulated points at the line. And I think that really, if we look over the scope of his career, not just 2011, that speaks to just what a matchup nightmare he was, right?
Yeah, no, totally. Like it's yeah, he was brilliant in that series. The dude lived at the line in that series. He averaged 12.2 free throw attempts for the series. And I remember there was one game, I think he had like 20 free throw attempts, or maybe even more, like 25 or something like that.
He had a 24 of 24 game.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, it's just
let me find the exact game, but yeah. And they had Ibaka and Collison on him, and like, I don't know, Scott Brooks, man. Like, you think Nick Collison is gonna?
Dude, he destroyed
all due respect
Ibaka.
to Nick Collison.
See, that's the thing with Dirk, because Dirk has like Dirk. You know, you think of Dirk as having like lead feet. He's kind of a galoot. He's like lumbering around. He's herky jerky. But we talked about that quick first step kind of thing he does, and also like the subtle little like moves he does. You know, where he shifts one way and then goes the other, and like he's just kind of crafty. So he can take like guys who are his size. He's a little bit faster than them. And then the guys like Ibaka, who are like, what, 6'9", 6'10", or something. Dirk's like 7 feet, a strong 7 feet tall. Just shoots over them with ease. Like, just turns around and just shoots right over them. And I might be giving Ibaka a few more inches. He might be like 6'9" or something. I don't know. But, yeah,
I'll look, see what
he demolished the Thunder. And it was beautiful to watch. I beat him in 5 games. I think they weren't favored in any of the series. Maybe the Portland series, but then Portland took him to 6 games. I mean, that was actually, and that was a pretty good team. The Portland.
Yeah, it was. It was when
Aldridge,
Brandon Roy was still healthy.
Yeah, Roy,
by the
Batum.
way, exactly. Yeah. This lists Ibaka at 7 feet, and yeah, it's like, if someone is close to his size, he can pull him out and go around them. And like
they list Ibaka at 7 feet tall.
That's what ESPN says. I didn't think he was quite.
Well,
that
I
big,
stand corrected, but that's even better then.
Yeah, well, who knows though? That might be kind of the same, along the same lines as like Barkley being listed at like 6'8" or whatever, right? We're not sure.
Yeah, good point.
But no, like, and then like you put someone. I was watching a clip where Dirk was talking about some of the best defenders he faced, and one of the guys he mentions is Sean Marion, actually. And so you get some of those smaller guys, but like you're saying, those smaller guys, he can, especially later on in his prime, particularly by 2011, where he's got much more of that post-up game and he's willing to get in the paint and be a little more physical. I mean, someone like Sean Marion, he can be as good of a defender, on-ball defender, as he wants, but ultimately Dirk's going to be able to shoot over him.
Yeah.
So it's a matchup thing, and the 24 for 24 game, by the way, was game 1 of that Thunder series, the 48-point game you mentioned. And you know, it's not an exaggeration, I don't think, to say that he changed the league. Dirk changed the way that we think of big men and the way that we think of like what positions mean in basketball, because there just had not been a European player this good. There had not been a 7-footer with this kind of range and this kind of consistent range. And to see kind of the way that he was, even in his career, like you're saying, the combination of consistency and an ability to evolve and you know, pick up these sort of little subtle changes to his game, whether it's the specific type of mid-range shot or learning the kind of post game, or you know, having that ability to be a little craftier and figure out ways to get to the line when he maybe wasn't totally in his prime or was on the tail end of his prime. I think that just speaks to kind of the footprint he left, and it's a very literal and metaphorically, it's a very large footprint we're dealing with, and it's easy to forget that maybe a little bit in 2020 when we've got so many European players, so many foreign-born players, so many big guys who can shoot.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this is just, I mean, you think back to those to the late 90s and the early 2000s when he's coming in, and that was not this kind of inevitable thing that we may think of it as today. And I think these guys who've been able to be in the league and do those things, they owe a lot to a player like Dirk to kind of show that, I have the ability to do this. Like, and that's credit to Don Nelson too, right? Like, don't
Yeah.
try to make him into a conventional power forward, because that's not what he is. And the fact that he was different ended up working to his advantage.
Yeah, it really did, man. It's well put. His post up game was kind of jarring to see so many possessions in the post, But it is true that like because like now is so much pace and space, and it's just not, you don't see a lot of post up except at the end of games. I guess you do see it a lot more in the playoffs. It's true. But it was really fun just to see like the mid-range game he had, like the kind of the fadeaways, the
Hmm.
way he would like catch the ball and just pull up and shoot it before like the defender's still kind of moving their feet. And he just pulls up and shoots it as they're, so that he doesn't give him a chance. He doesn't like stop like Barkley used to do, back him down for like 10 seconds and then shoot. Like he backed people down a little bit, but he would just very crafty, almost in that Don Nelson. Don Nelson didn't coach the 2011 championship team, but his imprints were all over it. His son was like was and is the GM, I believe.
Yeah.
And so like just like that kind of like run and gun, like running out like on a fast break, running and then just pulling up. Like Nash does it a lot too, like pulling up from like 10 feet or something, catching people off guard, getting those easy mid-range shots, and you see this big guy, and you don't think to like go out and close out on him or something. And
No.
like, it's just weird to see. It's just, you're right, like he's like one of the first big guys. I mean, he's just such a, you mentioned unicorn a lot, like when we were texting. Such a unicorn, like such a, just, I don't know if we're ever going to see another player like him, honestly. And I
Yeah.
do wish, like I looking through his career stats, like if let's say he came into the league right now, for instance,
Hmm.
he probably would have shot like twice as many threes in his career, because earlier in his
Yeah.
career he didn't shoot as many threes as you would think, or like, or
No.
even the mid part of his career as well. So,
I think just
um,
overall, I was surprised I remembered him shooting more, and I think what it was is that the Mavs team as a whole shot a lot, but he just didn't. He was just like a part of that instead of being, the majority of it. To your
yeah,
point, like if he comes in the league in 2009 with like Curry and Harden instead of 1999, then yeah, I mean we're talking about a totally different set of stats here.
yeah. Yeah, and like that's just unreal. Shooting 98% as a 7-footer from the free throw line in that Thunder series, and like just the fact that he is a career 87.9% free throw shooter, like just so efficient and just like unblockable, really. Like, I mean, I was trying to imagine him like going up against Shaq or like Matumbo, or like these, like, I guess Shaq wasn't a pure defensive center, but just like, I don't know, because he was being guarded by Gasol, he was being guarded by Joel Anthony, like all these centers,
Hmm.
and then you'd see him get guarded, that you mentioned, like by Haslam and like Ibaka and Chris Bosh, like these
Yep.
athletic kind of power forward slash center, even some wings, And they had Sean Marion on their team that championship year, so he didn't have to worry about him, like, which I guess was good.
Yeah.
But the dude was just, oh my gosh, so much fun to watch. And that I was also noticing that team had so much good defense on it, like Chandler, Marion,
Yeah.
Kid on the perimeter, and Kid being on the perimeter allowed them to bring in JJ Barea, who is not the best defender, but that kind of
No.
tilted the series. I just love this team. I love this 2011 team, but
Chandler was a
um,
really good guy to put with Dirk in the front court. They made that point actually. I was listening to a podcast that the Book of Basketball podcast that Bill Simmons did with Mark Stein, and I don't really need to know any of Bill Simmons' opinions on Dirk, but Mark Stein is an excellent reporter who's been with the Dallas Morning News and ESPN, the New York Times, and he's someone who, like, he goes way back with Dirk. I mean, he was like, other than the Nelsons, he was like the first guy to go see him in Germany during the lockout, and
he was there when Dirk was
was
taking baths when he was like 5 years old. That's how far back
right,
he
basically. Yeah, and like Stein, Mark Stein has always just been to me like a really measured and balanced kind of reasonable voice in NBA coverage. He's not like, he's not a sycophant. He's not like whiny. He's not too analytics driven. He's a great reporter, and I
agree.
Listening to his takes.
I mean, he's a big Nash and Dirk fan, so how could I not like him?
This is the thing. Like he loves them, and they're like, he was with them, especially Dirk, for his whole career. So nobody knows Dirk better than Mark Stein, and he has kind of made the point that this is a player who in 2006, I mean, he took this loss really hard, and to be able to bounce back and get that second chance against the same team, right, against the Heat, and redeem himself was just, I mean, it was like a really pretty shocking script, and you can't really talk about Dirk's career arc without talking about the failure and talking about 2006 and then 2007, because you've got all these incredible stats and these really memorable games, but in both of those years, the season ends in disappointment, and especially in 2007 when they get run off the court by Golden State, by this like kind of ragtag, strange Golden State team that ends up being like a horrible matchup for them, and they go 67-15. Stein was talking about how they started the season 0-4 in 2007, and then they ended up going 67-15. And
wow, I remember that
they lost to Golden State, and it's like, okay, well that's it, right? Like that's the end of the Mavericks, and then Avery Johnson gets fired, and it just, those next couple of years, Dallas is they're in the playoffs, but they never really make a run, and they're never in a situation where you feel like they're a team that can be a prime contender, because you got the Lakers, and then of course you got Phoenix, who's putting up a major challenge to the Lakers in 2010. And so 2011 really just, like we're saying, it just comes out of nowhere. And
Yeah, and even the Heat series, they were like, that's the thing. Like, the dude was just clutch. I mean, the Heat series, the first game they lose. I was watching the highlights of each game in that, or like was watching the highlights of showing the whole finals, and like they barely, so the Mavericks barely lost. So they beat Miami in game 2. They lose to Miami in game 1. They lose by 2 to Miami at home. And this is when they used to do like the 2 games,
2-3-2.
2-3-2, yeah. So they lose at home, and then they're down 1-2 to Miami in the finals. And then they come back and they win like a really close game to go up or to tie it 2-2. Then they win the next game, and they win the other game, both 9 and 10, those next 2 games. So it's just like they had, it wasn't just like what you're saying, like the whole career arc, but it was also in this one series, like where they had to come from being down, and he hit so many clutch shots to get them to that point.
Including the game winner of that game 2. I mean, that's the biggest game of the series, right, Ben? I feel like, because if they go down 2-0 and they still have like those kind of demons from 2006, even though I recognize the team was much different.
Yeah.
Then it's a totally different game, and it's weird because that game mirrored Game 3 of the '06 finals, where the Mavs were up 2-0, and they were up like 13 in the middle of the fourth quarter, and they end up losing the game. Now, the 2006 finals can be its own segment, because let me tell you, I've got some thoughts. I had not seen like a lot of this series because I was not in the country, and which I'll mention later. But like the idea that they could have gone up 3-0 and they didn't, and then they're down late in the fourth quarter 5 years later, about to go down 2-0, and Dirk is really leading this charge. He's got this layup on a break to tie the game with a minute left, and then he's got this. The single biggest shot of the series that he makes is the game winner on Bosch in that series, where he goes right by Bosch and puts it in with his left hand. And again, that just speaks to the versatility, the level of versatility you're talking about offensively with this player, because Dirk is not left-handed, and he's not known for beating guys off the dribble and getting all the way to the basket, especially guys like Chris Bosh. But he does it, and that's the game-winning shot. And yeah, like you're saying, that doesn't propel them to the title, because the Heat turn around and they win Game 3, and then Dallas proceeds to win 3 in a row to close it out. But they go down 2-0 in that series. I feel like they don't win. I'll just say that. I don't think they would have won 4 times in 5 games. Even as much as LeBron had like the yips, I just don't know that they would have been able to come back from down 2-0. So that comeback in Miami Game 2, just unreal.
Yeah, man. They were really close to being, like you said, really close to being down 0-3. And I gotta catch my breath here. It's just fun to look back, like just knowing that he's like a 12-year veteran, and knowing that everyone thought he was gonna lose most of these series, and like the team. But in retrospect, though, like they've got so many veteran good players on. Like I know Jason Kidd was past his prime for sure. Marion was a little bit past his prime, but still pretty spry. And then I think Chandler was underrated in the whole thing. Like people just kind of just they were such a dark horse. They're such a, like, no one gave them any kind of second thought. But anyways, I keep going over this team, but talk more about the what you've uncovered about that 2006 2007 Mavs team.
Yeah. So you've got the 05-06 team, and that's the team that really sort of allows them to make the leap, right? So if we can do a little bit of backstory on this, I really discovered the Mavericks in 2000, 2001, and that's first, it's really like the second full season, because the lockout season starts in February of 99. They don't get a whole season. Mark Stein was actually talking about how when he went to see Dirk was like, I hope the season gets canceled, because like I'm just not ready to play in the NBA, because he was 19. And then, of course, it ends up being a shortened season, and he gets thrown to the Wolves, right? Mm-hmm. So the first couple seasons are rough. Then in 2001, they actually beat the Jazz in 5 games. They win Game 5 in Utah. That's the Dirk, Finley, Nash, Mavs team, and really kind of the first time that I became enamored with this squad, and particularly that core of Finley and Nash and Nowitzki, with Nelly as the coach. They play the Kings 3 straight years. Following that, the Kings get them 2 out of 3. The middle year, 2003, they beat the Kings. That's the year the Spurs prevent the Lakers from four-peating. Mavs play the Spurs in the Western Conference Finals. The Mavs are not ready. They're good, but they're not Spurs good. So they're not ready yet, and they put up a fight, but ultimately Spurs win, and the Spurs win the title in 2003. 2004, that's Nash's last year. They get swept out. This is really, a tipping point, flashpoint, I should say, whatever you want to call it, for Dirk's career, where Cuban decides not to re-sign Steve Nash because of back concerns. Nash goes to Phoenix. the first year that they play one another as opponents, Nash gets the better of Nash's Suns get the better of Dirk's Mavs. That's in '05. Again, as is often the refrain in the 2000s, when Dirk and Nash are involved in a battle together or apart, the Spurs ultimately end up winning, right?
Yeah, I know, man.
in 2005. And then you get to
It's
06.
classic.
And when you think about the Spurs, right, like, you can make that argument that from '03 to '07, if Derek Fisher doesn't hit that crazy shot in '04, and if Dirk doesn't play out of his mind in '06 on the road, so if the Spurs just win those 2 home games, you could make an argument that isn't too far-fetched that the Spurs could have won 5 titles in a row, right?
Yeah.
Not saying they would have, but you can make that argument. So the first team who breaks that up is the '04 Lakers, and the other team who breaks that up, this is my long-winded intro, I apologize, is the '06 Mavs, right?
No, I love this.
So that '06 Mavs team goes on the road. This is back when they have those absurd rules about, like, division winners and who can play and what the seeding is, all of which is to say the Mavs and the Spurs are the 2 best teams in the West that year. I think the Spurs were 63-19 and the Mavs were 60-22, but they had to play in the second round because of the rules back then, right?
Yeah.
So it's a good series, back and forth. You get to Game 7. Nowitzki makes what's that point the biggest shot of his career, which is this, like, up and under, just gets the ball over the rim and goes right over Bowen and Duncan and gets like an and one with I think it's with his left hand. Do you remember that shot?
Yeah.
It's in overtime. It's in overtime, and Marv Albert is on the call, and it's just like it's like this ultimate moment where you've been watching Duncan vanquish Dirk and Phoenix and Dallas for several years in a row now, and this is a year where Dirk is like, no, this is not this time, right? Like this is our year to get you back, basically. I couldn't believe that they won that series, Ben. Like any Game 7 where Duncan in his prime, that's the other thing, right? This is prime Tim Duncan, in the middle of his prime, maybe end of his prime, and they go on the road and they win. They come back.
They had some great duels in that game. Dirk
duels.
and Duncan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or in that series, I should say.
Yeah, no. I mean, it really was just like a pleasure to watch them do battle. And the only thing I regret about it is that they didn't have like super fun teams at the same time. Like, I maintain that the Spurs of the 2000s were boring, and only when Pop like learned to start playing like the Suns and the Mavericks did the Spurs get fun, which is why like the 2014 Spurs who kicked the Heat's ass, like that was an incredible team to watch. But like if you watch the 2005, and I think we actually watched some of those games together, the Spurs Pistons, like that finals was fucking horrible. Like every game was like 80-75.
If you like defensive basketball, you might like it, but besides that,
like Bruce Bowen just like kicking Rip Hamilton in the shins.
I hate him so much, man. I've always hated him.
I know you do.
He's such a dirty bastard.
He's a very dirty player.
Kicking people in their nuts.
Yeah, no, I know.
They're not looking.
He's the worst. Yeah. But so Dirk beats Nash and beats Phoenix in that Western Conference Finals. He has a 50-point game. That's his career playoff high. June 1st, 06. He scores 50, Game 5.
Was that insane game when Nash had like 48 and a triple-double or something?
So Nash, so you're thinking of the game. You're thinking of the year before when the Suns won.
Yeah.
There's a game, and I think were you with me? I was like in Lexington,
UK?
I would say, for that game.
We are UK. Yeah, I was there.
Yeah. And we were watching, and like, yeah, dude, it was like Nash's final line was outrageous.
It was like 48. It was a 48-point triple-double. That's what I remember.
Like, not
it was like a double overtime game or something, but still.
Even if there wasn't a ton of defense played in that series, like still an outrageous line. But so Dirk comes back. He beats the Suns. They go to the finals. They play the Heat. I was in Europe during the series, and even though there were a couple of times that I tried to stay up, I was on European Central Time, so 6 hours ahead of the East Coast. And this, of course, is pre-smartphones. This is like step counts on your phone. So I don't know how many steps per day I was getting, but I can tell you it was a lot. It was like well over 10,000. And it was like combining that with like alcohol intake. There's just like no way if you have a full day that you can like stay up for a game that starts at 3 or 4 a.m. It's very difficult, right, to do. And so I missed like basically this entire series. And I'd always heard sort of some of the myths and the legends of this series. Cuban basically threatening to sell the team because he was so angry, and talking about, yelling at David Stern about how the league was rigged, and just being like very, very Mark Cuban in every single way. And I guess what I didn't really fully understand was just like, yeah, I knew that Dwayne Wade, that there's the infamous Game 5 where Dwayne Wade shoots more free throws than the whole Mavericks team. Dallas goes up 2-0. They have that chance to go up 3-0, and they blow it. Gary Payton hit the jumper. Dirk in that game misses a big free throw. Is it that game? Yeah, I want to say it's that game. Dirk misses a big free throw. Josh Howard, remember that guy? He misses a couple big free throws. But like, what I didn't really like, the calls that came late in the games were just like, Game 5. Okay, so Dallas wins the first 2 games. They blow a fourth quarter lead, and then I think they missed 3 or 4 free throws in the final minute of Game 3. They lose, so they give the Heat a lifeline. The Heat blow them out in Game 4. So it's Game 5. Dirk hits this jumper like over Haslam, and with like Shaq coming at him, hits this incredible jumper to put the Mavs up 100-99. And he called timeout to get it at half court. Wade basically starts his like attack on the rim from like 35 feet out, and he goes through and he's like getting to the basket, and you got people who are reaching out and swiping at him, and they call a foul on the floor with 1.8 seconds left. They call a foul on the floor like as he's not even like to the rim yet. He's like between the 3-point line and the rim. And that's the game. Dwayne Wade hits 2 free throws. And the Heat win 101-100. Dirk famously drop kicks the ball into the stands after this game because Dallas has lost its 3rd straight game. By the way, basically from what I could find, the only controversial like moment, what could even pass for controversial, the only thing I could find in his like entire 20-year career was like when he punted the ball in to the Miami crowd because he had lost the 3rd straight game, and at that point the series literally should have been over. Like they should have won 4-1, but instead they're down 3-2. Wade goes back, and I was watching Game 6 this past weekend. It's interesting to think of Wade and Nowitzki alongside each other because they retired in the same year. Dirk is a few years older and, of course, came out of high school. Never a big Wade guy. Ben, I'll just say that. Not a big Dwayne Wade guy.
I'm not either.
I always felt like he was a pretty dirty player and really a great player, but someone who is like low-key a pretty dirty player. He was the one who broke Kobe Bryant's nose in the All-Star game, if you'll recall.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
Just someone who is good, but maybe, I don't know, really got the benefit of the doubt on a lot of things. It was not always his field goal percentages were not great. He wasn't a good 3-point shooter. Just not my type of player. But
he was a really bad 3-point shooter, and he shot a lot. He shot more threes than he should have. Although he kind of tailed off here and there. I mean, he actually was a decent field goal percentage shooter. He was 48%, which is not bad. But he had a lot.
That's higher than I thought.
Yeah,
he's also like an awesome defender. I mean, he's a great all-around player.
Yeah, he was a great defender, but I've never been a fan. I don't know what it is about him. I just whatever. I mean, different strokes for different folks. Just never was really my kind of player. But
right. And so in Game 6, there's another play, and they end up winning by 3. But there's another play where like Dirk gets caught on a pick and roll, and he switches, and Wade just like runs into Dirk and like kind of just puts his, he like sort of like throws his head up like he's been shot, and Dirk, they call a foul, right? And again, they're in the bonus, and Dirk like takes his mouthpiece out of his mouth and is about to like spike it down like a football, and he doesn't. But it's just like the culmination of all this frustration. And Wade, of course, goes to the line, he hits both free throws, and then Dallas doesn't come any closer. That was when it was a 1-point game, by the way. So again, it's like there are these late calls that Wade gets. Dallas, from what I was watching, Dallas had a better team. Okay, the Heat won, great for them. Who knows what that changes in terms of the course of Dirk's career and the Mavs as a franchise if they win that series. You can think of all the kind of chain reactions, but it's a series where you leave watching the highlights and some of the in-game sequences, and it's like when Mark Stein talks about how much this affected Dirk, and he talks about the difference between Dirk and Nash and the way that Nash is really not someone. He's not a 24/7 basketball junkie. He looks forward, not behind. He doesn't go back and think about these things as much as a lot of players do. And Dirk does that a ton. Dirk is like a 24/7 basketball junkie. Like when he's done at practice and then plays and then does his interviews after the game and goes home, he's like turns on NBA TV and he's watching like basketball basically and thinking about basketball all the time. So you think about someone who's that enamored and enthralled with the game, and then to lose that way and lose at a point where he was reaching his peak and reaching his prime.
Yeah.
And you couple that with then coming back, being the MVP of the league, going 50, 40, 90, having his best individual season, but then being really bad in the playoffs. I mean, here's some playoff numbers from against the Warriors. 19.7 points a game, 11.3 boards, 2.3 assists, 37.5% from the field, 17.8 from three. I mean, he was not anywhere close to the 50, 40, 90 standard he set in that series. And that point, it was like, to me, it was like, Dirk is going to need, he's going to, it's not like, he's not going to win a title, but I definitely didn't think he'd win a title as the best player on the team. And you really look at when Nash and Finley left, so let's say post 06, because I think, post 05. I think Finley's last year was maybe 05.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think Finley might have hung around maybe one more year, but Nash definitely left.
Yeah. And eventually Finley went to San Antonio, right?
Yeah.
But excluding Luka, right, who he played with when he was Dirk was, God bless Dirk, but he was like a mummy basically when he was playing with Luka last year. Excluding Luka, who's the best player he played with after Nash and Finley left?
There's Jason Terry was good for a while, but
it's not a great list though, right?
It's not. He had broken down.
No second star.
Peja Stojakovic. You had old Jason Kidd. Sean Marion was really good, but he was kind of towards the end. Man, yeah.
They all worked as pieces, but there was no bona fide second star. Right?
No, it's true.
And that's a credit to Dirk's ability. But all these criticisms, Europeans are soft. Dirk is too, he's not a great defender. I think he gets kind of a bad rap. He wasn't like a turnstile, but he's not a great defender. He's not making any All-NBA teams. But it's just he's an offensive guy. He's great from October through April. But if you get into May or June with that guy, he can't do it. And again, to circle back to our originals, our starting point here, this is what made the 2011 run even more vindicating and validating than even a normal championship run for that kind of player would be. Just the fact that it was so written off, and it was that was it. He missed
honestly,
his window
it would be like if Nash's 2010 team won a championship. It had this kind of ragtag feel to it. This ragtag group. And going back to that Warriors upset, that was just a bewildering series to watch. But you could just tell that like the Mavericks seemed tight. The home court advantage, Golden State was amazing. Like their fans in Oracle, it remains to be seen how passionate they'll be at the new Chase Arena or whatever. Because like this past season, I mean, their team was so horrible, and the ticket prices have gone way up. So you might not have as many diehards there, but
Yeah.
that home court advantage was incredible. But I was listening to the All the Smoke podcast with Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes,
Yeah.
and I gotta tell
I've
you, man,
enjoyed. I've listened to it a couple times. It's pretty entertaining.
It is, man. It's pretty good. Like they're real guys, and they kind of straight talkers or whatever. But Steven Jackson has such a high opinion of himself. It's like whenever Dirk Nowitzki's name comes up, he's like, "Oh, I punked him. I punked Dirk. I punked him. I punked him." It's like, okay, man, you beat Dirk one time in a series, and you lost to the Utah Jazz, but you got killed by the Utah Jazz after that. But anyways, but like it's just like, and he's always talking about how he's better than this guy, he's better than that guy. Like he should have been an all-star. He should have done this. He should have done that. It's just like you can see why this guy bounced around from team to team. But I do think that there's a sliver of what he said that's true. Like they totally, I don't know if it was like an attitude thing, or if it was just an energy thing, or it was the home court, or they just had a bunch of guys who worked well together, and
or
a lot of guys who could score.
Was like the hangover.
I think hangover probably has something to do with it for sure. I mean, I think that definitely, and like when there's a little bit of doubt that they could watch a lead crumble away, like you said, then it just started to snowball. As soon as they lose that game,
they start thinking about the Heat from that previous year. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I really got to give it to Dirk. And this is totally just gushing all over this right now, but Dirk's ability to just be mentally tough, and to like all those hours with his German mentor Holger, just like I mean, you could just see it all come together in that 2011 run, and all that heartache, all that like failure, and like getting embarrassed and being humbled. And it was just, I think that's why it was so satisfying, because it was, as I've said, it was, the dozen years of when he first came in the league, where he was, kind of awkward, and he got, embarrassed nightly on defense, and he struggled, he couldn't shoot, and all that just culminates into this beating this team that was a super team. It was it wasn't the first super team, but it was like when that term started getting thrown around, because like, in years past, you had Karl Malone, Gary Payton, Kobe, Shaq, all on the same team. Yeah, you had the Celtics teams, but this was like the first time the players kind of orchestrated themselves.
Well, they did it, and they were in their primes.
Yes, they were in their primes. I'm not saying it's wrong or anything. I'm just saying, it was the first time. And Dirk and this like ragtag group of like has-beens, that's a little bit overdoing it a little bit, but they were past their prime. Like Jason Kidd, well past his prime. Marion was past his prime. Peja Stojakovic, who heated up for a couple games in that playoffs, like just was amazing, but then he disappeared. He was there, and like JJ Barea, Deshaun Stevenson, kind of like a weird enforcer guy. I mean,
a guy who just like doesn't give a fuck and is willing to mix it up.
Yeah, Tyson
which is
Chandler,
exactly the kind of player. That guy and Chandler, exactly. Those are exactly the types of dudes that the Mavs were missing in previous years. Right?
Yeah, like if they had Deshaun Stevenson versus that Warriors team, somebody to get back into Steven Jackson's face or punk Steven Jackson, then I think you're exactly right. And then they had, they had great defense, like Chandler kind of anchoring everything. It's in my top 3 favorite title teams. Maybe my number 1, honestly. Like it's just, the whole run was so incredible.
Anyway,
but
one other thing I want to mention, actually, real quick. It's actually two quick things. Number one, rewatching, and again, I'm putting Dirk and Wade in the same category just because I think of they're so intertwined in a lot of ways, and it was interesting to watch
Yeah.
the Game 6 of '06 where Dwayne Wade is 24 and Dirk is about to turn 28, and like 24-year-old Dwayne Wade, you watch that and you think about he ends up, he has basically 10, 11, 12, maybe 12 good years in the league, and this is like 24-year-old Wade, like guys just flying around the court. Dirk is someone who, at that point, he's almost 28. He wins the title in, what is it, I think year 13, maybe 12 or 13, and it's interesting to watch just because he's a little more athletic, and he definitely is more, that first step you're talking about. Guys find out real quick that he's a lot quicker than maybe he looks.
Yeah.
But, like, in some ways, Ben, he kind of looked the same in 2006 as he did in 2011. And I actually think that works to his advantage because he didn't rely overly rely or disproportionately rely on just like his first step and his athleticism the way that a lot of players do. He was able to kind of, this is true with a player like Duncan, I think, too, right?
Yeah.
You're able to age in a way where, like, it's true with Garnett, I would say. Like, there's a number of big men who they're able to age in a way where it's like, yeah, they're not as good as they were when they're 28, but like 33-year-old Dirk in his 13th season looked a lot different than 34-year-old Dwayne Wade in his 12th season.
Yeah.
And I think that's a credit to Dirk's ability to evolve.
And Dwayne was like, his game was kind of centered around his athleticism. And Dirk's and Duncan's, they're big guys too, but it was more fundamental, more crafted, more shooting in Dirk's case. In Duncan's case, more like footwork and fundamentals and being good spacing, being where you're supposed to be and things like that. And I think that's why I gravitated towards Dirk, because I just enjoyed the craftsmanship, the workman-like style to his game. That obviously the durability and the consistency, but just being, kind of the whole like stumps on skates thing that Ben Golliver talks about. When you like, it's just hilarious. It's a hilarious visual. And that's kind of the way he looks all the time when he's like running around. He's just like, he seems really unathletic. And there's that whole trope about, like white guys, unathletic, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But honestly,
but when he gets caught on a switch or like a pick and roll, there are times where you're like, oh no, Dirk.
I know. Exactly. And like looking at Jordan doc, and they're talking about Jordan catching like an old like Bill Walton on a pick, like coming around the corner, and like Bill Walton's guarding him, and he just torched Bill Walton over and over again.
Yeah.
And it kind of made me think of Dirk a little bit. I was like, God, watching Dirk in some of these highlight packages, but he wasn't the greatest defender, obviously, but he was crafty. He got steals. There's some years where he averaged like a steal and a block a game, which is pretty good for a big guy. It's not great, but it's decent. But he just relied on his practice jump shot, and his 10,000-hour jump shot, however you want to talk about it. And it was different than someone like Wade, who's just, when Wade's athleticism started to drop, he was much less effective. He became like a net negative on the court. Dirks and Duncan,
he killed the Heat in the finals where the Spurs, LeBron was just like basically a one-man team in that 2014 finals because Wade had dropped off so much.
Oh, it's one of my other favorite finals, actually.
Yeah.
That's up there too.
Speaking of revenge.
Yeah, those Spurs teams could just pass.
Yeah. The other thing I would say too is like, and I'll admit this, I had kind of like a complicated relationship with the Mavericks in the 2000s. Relationship is not the right word, but I had sort of mixed feelings about it because I'll tell you, just I remember I would wake up and check in these internet cafes, check these scores of these games that I was not watching live in '06. And like when Dirk and Nash split, like I had nothing against Dallas. Okay. I had nothing against Dirk ever. But I was also kind of my thinking was generally, the kind of basketball that I've liked watching, it's like guard driven. It's point guard driven, and Nash is like the engine. So who's going to play more like the Mavericks teams from like '01 to '04? Well, to me, the answer, and I think the answer ended up being pretty clearly, was the Suns, right?
Yeah.
And so when Nash went, and it just so happened they happened to play his first 2 years in the league, they happened to play each other in the playoffs both years, once in the conference semis, once in the conference finals, and of course they split those appearances. I was rooting for the Suns because it was like, the Suns play more like what the reason I kind of fell for the Mavs to begin with than the Mavs do. And combine that with being, a little iffy on like Cuban, a little annoyed that Cuban wouldn't re-sign Nash, right? Maybe not as annoyed. I know you were pretty irritated by that.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, like the back issues were concerning, but yeah, I was annoyed. Did I tell you that story about Cuban in Bloomington, Indiana?
You did. Can you please tell the people though? That's a good. If you don't want to put it on the pod.
Well, I don't mind. I don't mind. So I'll tell kind of a brief version because. But anyway, so I was there at the wee hours at this bar called the Bluebird, and we go there all the time. They had like 10-cent beers on Tuesdays, and it was one of those classic college bars. Great live music, a lot of reggae, and a lot of underground hip hop would come through there, which was my favorite back then. So I was there all the time, and there was this big one night we were in the front watching a show. I can't remember who was playing. Then we so there's a back area where there was like a second bar, there was some booths and everything, and there was a kind of a crowd of people mulling around, and my friend and I walked in there, Matthew McCourt, my buddy from IU. It was just he and I. We walked in the back, and Mark Cuban was there. So he went to IU. He went to the Kelley School of Business. He was there with his buddy, this guy who looked like. Who did he look like? One of the singers of Van Halen, like the guy with the blonde hair. What the fuck's his name? Not David Lee Roth, the other guy.
Danny Hager?
Yes, he had this friend who looked just like Danny Hagar. It wasn't Danny Hagar.
Sammy Hagar, yeah.
Sammy Hagar. So he was like this little guy with like this big blonde hair and like just very well groomed and everything. They look so out of place, like all these like disgusting college kids around them. A lot of girls mulling around. Anyways, so I know I said this would be a brief story, so I'll try to get to the point.
No, it's fine.
But I walked over. I walked over to him. I was really we're both pretty drunk, but we kind of like he was just like talking to people and like shaking hands and like doing all that stuff, and it was so approachable. He's just right there, I feel like it was just very odd that he was that out in the open, So I just walked up to him and like put my hand out, and he was smiling and this big fucking grin, this big shit-eating grin on his face, and he was obviously drunk, kind of slurring his words, and I shook his hand, and I said, the first thing I said was, this is right after he traded Nash, like at least like the next year, or like it was the season after he traded Nash.
Yeah.
Maybe even like before the season started.
Well, but hold on, let's be fair for a second. He didn't trade him, right? He just didn't re-sign him.
Oh yeah, that's right. He didn't trade him. He didn't re-sign him.
He didn't deal him. Yeah,
it's a good point. Yeah, I don't think it wasn't even a sign and trade, was it? I don't think.
No, I think he just let him walk.
He let him walk. So I walked up to him and I was like, I'm a big Steve Nash fan, and like immediately, his face, like he had this big ass grin on his face, a huge smile. It inverted to a frown, like it was cartoony, and he said, "Fuck you." It's like, fuck off. And
wow.
And I just stood there and I was just smiling like a little nasty little asshole troll. And his buddy kind of pushed me back. He's like, it's raw, man. It's raw. Don't go there. It's raw. And then I just kind of like talked, and then actually Cuban came over. I swear to God, he came over and he apologized like about 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
And after that, everyone was going outside, and this girl I knew, she was like freaking out. Like she was like, "Oh, I want to get in this limo." So about 20 kids got in this big Hummer limo that he had. And I was at the very end of the line, and he closed the door like right in my face. Yeah, I was like the only person who didn't get in the limo. Like I was literally the only person. And
I've never heard that part of the story.
And the limo was like just drove away from me. I was just standing there, and I didn't really want to go anyway. But I would have gone.
He's just pointing at you like you're Hey, that's Nash guy. Don't let Nash guy in. I would love to know. I would love to know the month and year that this happened, because that would be really interesting. I mean, you think about that timeline, like, so did it happen junior or senior year, you said?
Oh, man. You know?
And by the way, we should point out Mark Cuban is an IU alum, right? He wasn't just like randomly in Bloomington, Indiana.
Yeah. He went. That's right. He went to Kelly School of Business, so he's like, he's
Oh, sorry. I missed that if you said it.
No, I might not. But no, I might not have said that he actually went there, but or that he like is an alumni. I did say he went there, but I didn't say he was an alumni. Anyways, that's a good question, man. I think it was probably senior year. I'm trying to think.
Okay. See, that's interesting, because at that point, that's when they beat him, when they got him back. But maybe you saw him before that series. That series would have been like May and June of 2006.
It was.
But if you'd seen him in like May of 2005, that's when the Suns beat him.
I know that it was. I think it was like the first season without Nash.
Okay.
Like either during the season or at the very beginning. Yeah, I think it was 2004. So that would make it junior year.
Right. So literally, but literally Nash's first MVP year.
Yeah. So I think
it's raw. It's raw.
I think Nash.
I love it.
I think Nash was having a good year at that point too. Maybe, I don't know. I wish I could like find I wish I kept a memento from that night, and I could give you the exact date.
I mean, it's kind of a silly reaction to me, because it's not like they traded him and then they went, they were like the post Jordan Bulls. Like the Mavs were still incredible.
They got better after they traded him. Arguably,
yeah.
Not arguably.
No, I think
the record got better.
Yeah. But that's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure.
Gaudy stats versus Mark Cuban and
then here's another Mark Cuban story really fast too.
Okay.
So later when I made that DeAndre Jordan animated video, it got uploaded to, I don't know if you remember that video that I made with like on DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah.
So I uploaded it to Reddit, and then it kind of like, it got some views or whatever, and then
it blew up. Yeah.
And so then like a few months later, I get an email from the Mavericks, and the PR guy from the Mavericks, he'd been trying to reach me, but the website was all fucked up, and it was going to my spam folder. So I had like, the moment I released that video and it kind of blew up, like I didn't get any people email me, but I didn't get any of the emails. So it was probably bad career wise, but anyways, because somebody might want to work with me or something. I don't know. But anyways, so he finally got a hold of me, and he said that Mark had seen the video and thought it was like really funny, and wanted to show it like during halftime or something, like wanted to show it like in the arena. And I told the guy that story that I just told you. I was like, I don't know if Mark likes me because of this whole thing that happened in college. Yeah. And he was like, man, there's no fucking way he remembers you.
Yeah.
But
which as many people as that dude meets, I'm sure is true, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah. He's like, man, we just want to use your video, and because I don't know how it even came up or whatever, but
You're like, tell him to apologize.
and all my
I want a handwritten apology.
I was like, I'm not gonna work with him unless
a Dirk autographed jersey.
Yeah, and then in my stupidity, although it probably wouldn't have happened, because after he showed that video, like they got a bunch of bad press and everything, so they probably wouldn't have wanted to work with me after that. But he was like, he was, as a favor, he was like, you should pitch us some ideas for other videos we could show during the game or whatever. So I pitched him. So he showed me some of their videos, and they had like Sean Marion as like Super Mario and like all this shit. So I pitched him an idea that Dirk was like, he was a cowboy, coming into like a town, kind of like Clint Eastwood style, and he walks into this bar, and like there's this weird game that's in the bar that's like a huge robot, like kind of the Fox style robot, like Cletus.
Yeah, Cletus.
It's a machine that like tries to block your shot, and like all these cowboys are going up trying to do it, and the machine blocks their shot like over and over and over again. And Dirk goes in there and does like his classic like fade away with the knee up, and like beats the robot, and that could be one of the videos. And they totally like were not into that idea at all. They're like, no, it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. And then I was like, fine, if you don't do that idea, then I don't know, maybe we shouldn't work together.
Yeah.
And
I don't know.
They put the kibosh.
That's their loss.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's their loss, So I sacrificed a chance to work with Mark Cuban because he dismissed my shot blocking robot idea. Chris Dirk.
A decade after telling you to fuck off because he had mistakenly let Steve Nash go to the Suns.
Yeah. Well, third time's the charm. Third time's the charm.
Right.
Maybe next time
That's right.
we can our paths cross.
Whatever the next kind of social media platform, it'll be something to do with like you and Luca and Cuban, and you can tell Cuban like we've come across each other 2 times in life already. Do you remember either one?
And he'll be like, who the fuck are you, man?
Yeah, right. But
all right, there's a little trip down memory lane.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love those nostalgia sidebars. Those are good. So thank you for that. Now, the other reason, and this is like a really stupid reason, okay, but I mentioned I sided with the Suns. The other reason I wasn't like as annoyed by the Mavericks not winning, even though I wanted them to win, let me be clear, I wanted them to win in 2006. And this is such a dumb reason. It has not aged up well at all. But I was really, at that point, invested in Shaq finishing his career with more titles than Kobe. And so when Shaq, they were tied at 3, obviously, at that point. Of course, Shaq wins that one, and then Kobe ends up winning 2 and wins 5-4. Obviously, not a good reason in retrospect. Not a big Shaq guy, not a big Shaq fan. Also not a big Kobe fan.
Yeah, same.
So
Kobe.
Taking sides in something where I didn't really like either guy, maybe not the best move. But all of that said, I was bummed when they got not swept, but beat in 6 in 2007 versus the Warriors. And it was like, from that point, it was just like, that's it. And I think the combination of that and then what happened in 2007 with the Suns, which we don't need to rehash right now, but that obviously happened the same year. And then you move ahead to Kerr trading for Shaq, which was not a good trade for the Suns. And then 10.
Although you want to talk really fast, just to bring that up.
Yeah.
Like that. Remember that double overtime game, or what is it? Triple or overtime game when Tim Duncan hits that banker 3.
Yeah.
If the Suns had won that game, I think that series would have been different. But
no, you're right.
That hurt.
No, you're right.
But I agree. Shaq seemed kind of awkward on that team from the very beginning.
And he just like 08 was that spring of 08. He just was not like he was on his way out. Like it was just very clear at that point. Like the last you were getting of him that was good was really like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe he had one more good season in there, but like that 06 finals run was kind of like his last hurrah, right? In terms of being like a top level player.
I think so. I'm looking at his stats.
I have no. By the way, I'm just trying. This is purely off memory. I don't. The statistics might completely disprove what I just said.
He was definitely on a downturn, I think, at that point. But
yeah,
find out shortly. I mean, well, I'm going to do a stat or a Shaq Gaudy pod at some point because he does have he has some really gaudy stats, and they were all basically derived from his winning the genetic lottery, his athleticism, because famously out of shape and didn't work out a lot. But
no,
yeah.
Well, the combination of that, and then you get to the 2010 series with the Lakers, where I still think the Suns should have won, and they played the Celtics, and who knows?
Me too, man.
They definitely would have beaten the Cavs in 07. So it's like the Mavs and the Suns are kind of together, and I'm wanting either team or one of them to win, and then 10 is done.
They're both tormented by the Spurs, like you said.
They're both tormented by the Spurs and the Lakers in the case of the Suns. And
although the Suns tormented the Lakers once they lost Shaq, and that was fun. It was fun to watch.
This is true. Yeah, this is true.
Kobe just bitching and crying all the time and shooting like 35 shots a game. Yeah.
Yeah, but like you get to 2011 and it's just like, okay, 2010 was the Suns' last hurrah, and the Mavericks just seem like they don't have it. And again, it's just like boom, out of nowhere, this all comes. I got some more stats I want to reel off for you. May I do that?
Sure.
Okay.
Hit me. And then I want to ask you one more thing after that, and then we'll probably put a bow on it.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, so Dirk made 12 straight All NBA teams, either first, second, or third team, 2001 to 2012. The only other players to do that in league history: Kobe, Duncan, LeBron, Shaq, Bob Cousy, Jerry West. That's the list. The list of 7: Kobe, Duncan, LeBron, Shaq, Cousy, West, and Dirk. 2007 MVP, 2011 Finals MVP, led the league in win shares in 06 and 07, led the league in win shares per 48 minutes in 05, 06, 07. What else we got here? Career high, I may have already mentioned this, career high is December 2nd of 04 versus the Rockets. He went for 53. And then the last stat to mention, which really just, I think, maybe is the stat above all others that could just give you a sense of his greatness and his role as a league-changing offensive player, is the fact that he is 6th all time on the points list. He finishes his career with 31,560 points. He's behind only Kareem, Malone, LeBron, Kobe, and MJ. He's ahead of, and this is rounding out the top 12, Dirk is 6th. He's ahead of Wilt Chamberlain, Shaquille O'Neal, Moses Malone, Elvin Hayes, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Oscar Robertson.
Wow.
I think Tim Duncan is 13th on that list. So this is a no doubt Hall of Famer. I don't subscribe to whatever Bill Simmons 12-tier layer pantheon ranking players bullshit is. I can't possibly I don't have the level of knowledge, nor do I really have the interest in trying to rank all these guys against one another when you're talking about players 10 to 50. I don't know how you possibly think about that. That being said, if I were going to try and just sketch out where he would belong, I feel like 6th on the all-time scoring list. To me, it's a hard case. It would be hard to put him outside of the top 20 of all time. I feel like he's somewhere probably between 10 and 20.
That's
on the all-time list. You think that's high?
That seems reasonable. I mean, I need to at some point got to do a Gaudy stats app of ranking players or like ranking like the top 20 or at least looking at rankings of the
Yeah.
top 20 and seeing who you'd move up or move down. But honestly, I think it's not crazy. It's really not. And especially when you see what he's done, how he's sliced through, fellow Hall of Famers of his era, LeBron, taking down LeBron, undermatched, against
Yep.
LeBron, Wade, and Bosh.
Yep. Beat Tim Duncan in his prime in 06.
Yeah.
Beat MVP Nash in 06.
Yeah, I mean, we already talked about it, the gauntlet he went through in 2010, 2011, beating Tim Duncan. The numbers are there, the consistency, the all-star appearances. You should go down the line, like the shooting percentage. The dude shot 47% for his career, and he shot most of those from the perimeter. I mean, most of those from he did not he shot some layups, obviously got some dunks, but it was like a lot of jump shots, and it's incredible. I mean, it's incredible for someone that size. He had a 50-40-90 season. Obviously, I've touched on that before, but
that's just not something that someone that big does. Like
no,
a 50-40-90 season is for guards.
Yeah, I mean, like we didn't get to see Sabonis with his injury and didn't come to the U.S. So and obviously he was much more athletic than Dirk was in his prime. But yeah, I mean, he's just like he's a unicorn, as you said. He's a one of a kind player. There's gonna be more guys like him probably because of all the 3-point shooting, but the artistry in the post was I don't know if it's underrated, but it's just like so fun to watch, and it's just a lost art almost in today's game. I mean, people keep saying like Porzingis to get back in the post, which I don't agree with, but that was like some people were clamoring for that. But like Porzingis doesn't have the footwork that Dirk has. He's got a nice touch, but he's basically like Dirk light, a little bit more. He's more athletic. He can block shots probably better than Dirk, but he doesn't have the full offensive arsenal, all the little, even the ball handling. Like Dirk was an underrated ball handler, out in the open court, the way he could kind of, run the offense, dribble, just being so big, being a galoot, being clumsy looking.
Right.
And still being able
like
to.
Porzingis is just big enough to not be able to.
Yeah.
He's like just too tall to be able to do some of the stuff. Dirk was at like the maximum height to be able to do some of what he did, and if he were any taller, it would have been awkward. And I
feel like Dirk was wider too. He was like had like a wider frame.
He definitely a much wider frame. Two other things real fast before we get to your last question, real quick. Number one, if I had to think about something other than the 06-07 stretch that was disappointing about his career, I would just say the post-championship part of the career, which is technically like 35 or 40%, he just, like the Mavericks made, and this isn't his fault, they made efforts to get him help, but they just had like bad signing after bad signing. And it just was a shame that he was unable to, in that last really 7, 8, 9 years, be on a team that could contend in any kind of real way. So that's number one.
That's a bummer.
Number two would be Stein talked about this is again like the resident Dirkologist, Dirk historian, like what's your comp for Dirk? And he's like, well, there really are none, and I thought there would not possibly be any until, and he said the most obvious and the only one that you can even, with all of the things he does, that you can even look someone in the face with a straight face and say is Durant, just because of the fact that they're both such unicorns and 7 feet and have such amazing offensive games. Now, that's not an apples to apples comparison, which he made the point of, but in terms of like this unique skill set and having someone at that size with that length who can dribble and shoot and do all these things that you're not used to someone that big being able to do, that's the comparison. But then the last part of that would be, Dirk is a universally beloved teammate. Like you just don't hear anyone say anything bad about him for his entire time in Dallas. I think, I think there's either 5 or 6 guys who've played their entire careers and had at least, it was maybe 12 or 13 All-Star appearances with the same team, and Dirk is one of them. So he's this like beloved figure, and certainly that would put him apart from the on the court stuff. That would separate him a little bit from KD because, I mean, KD, some of it is not really fair to him. Some of it is sort of self-imposed, but there's a lot of kind of, especially since he's left Oklahoma City, there's just been a lot of noise around everything that Durant does, and
I think it's fair.
I don't want to make that into like some like old man sports take, like, oh, Dirk just does things the right way, because I love Durant. I love watching Durant play, but like.
But he left Oklahoma City. If he had stayed in Oklahoma City the whole time, I think it would have changed the perception around him.
Wouldn't have gotten any of the shit he did. You're right.
I don't think he's a bad teammate. He just is not beloved as a teammate.
He also just should not be getting into fights online with random fans. That's my other thought about Katie. But it's a credit to Dirk to be in the spotlight. People like Dirk and Duncan. Maybe you can think of it as being boring, but like their ability to generate zero controversy in a league where there's constant controversy and egos and sniping at one another and players and coaches not getting along and players not getting along with players and all this other alpha male, stuff that characterizes this league. The fact that he just has like a 100% approval rating or very near there. And the only remotely controversial thing he was involved with was that off-the-court thing where that woman he was dating was basically like catfishing him. I think that speaks very highly of him, and that really just sort of adds a layer of kind of admiration and mystique on someone who already displays enough of that on the court.
Yeah, I mean, he was beloved. He's got a really kind of a easygoing personality. It was interesting. I remember listening to a podcast with an interview with him. He was talking about how the emotional toll that Warriors exit in the playoffs, that Warriors defeat had on him. Like he went to Australia and he kind of he had to kind of rediscover his desire again. And then he, obviously it was a long road to get back to the finals again, and he faces a team that knocked him out. Kind of poetic justice there, but he's just a good guy. Kind of like the same way that Klay Thompson's a good guy. Everyone likes Klay. He's just Jesus Christ. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
I was leaning back and I knocked over my chair. But everyone likes Klay. He's easygoing. He gets along with everybody. And Dirk's just a good dude, man.
No demands ever with that guy.
yeah. There's no ego. I mean, he just wanted to win. Like it's just a pure competitive goal.
Yeah.
He wanted to stay with the same franchise, and he wanted to win. It's just, not to sound like an old guy again, but you don't see as much these days. You just don't see it as much.
No, yeah. Steph and Klay are awesome. I mean, you don't need to. I love that duo, and
best shooting backcourt of all time, easily.
And I mean, even though it wasn't fun always because they were just too good, I love watching just how much of a machine they could become when they combined their powers with Durant. I mean, that was just
I love it.
Was amazing to watch.
I like the 2015 team better. Well, I was just, I was just gonna ask. Did you say there was a rumor about Dirk possibly going to UK? I was just curious about that.
Yeah.
So what have you heard about that?
That had always been a rumor, and I don't know, some of that stuff, it was just rumored that he, and I don't know that there's a lot of truth to it, but the thinking was if he was going to come for a year and just learn how to play in the American game, because that was the other thing. He's on this team. He's not like Luka coming, where Luka's playing in the Spanish league for Real Madrid.
Playing 35-year-old men and stuff.
Yeah, like Dirk's playing in this German. I can't remember if it's first or second division, but it's not the level that Luka's playing on. And so you're making this huge leap, and the thinking was maybe I need a year of school, and if he was going to get a year of school, he would consider coming to a school like Kentucky. Now, a lot of that had been generated, I think, by UK fans. I know there had been sort of at least whispers that this guy who people didn't know a lot about, but that was 7 feet tall and German, was interested in playing for a big program. And obviously that never came to fruition. He did well enough in some of the kind of like high school or AAU, whatever tournaments as a senior in high school here that there was just like no chance he was going to go to college. But it is an interesting scenario to think if Dirk ends up, and at that point it would have been for Tubby Smith, not Rick Pitino, but if Dirk ends up in Lexington, you know, it's hard to imagine that guy in a Kentucky uniform or in any college uniform, really. But it's an interesting wrinkle. Yeah, but you gotta that kind of thing. You always got to take with a grain of salt because it's like, you know, I swear I've heard like 5 different schools claim, well, KG was going to go. I mean, Michigan. You hear Michigan fans, KG was going to Michigan. No, KG was going to Illinois. No, KG was actually going to go to North Carolina and play for Dean Smith. Same thing with Kobe. Kobe was no question going to Duke, right? Of course, that started to really come up when Coach K was on Team USA, coaching Team USA, right? LeBron is probably the worst of all. Like, there are 10 schools, including Louisville, who insist that, like, if LeBron, had he gone to college, he was going to go play at their school. So it's, you know, it's not verified by any means. Who knows? But it's an interesting thing to consider. And, you know, you combine that with the idea that, like, very early internet, pre-social media of any kind, these European players, like, we really did not know, like, what people didn't know what they were getting, right? Like, you look now and there's, like, this HD footage of a player like Luka or
even Giannis. Like, it was the mystery around Giannis, you know?
Yeah. Like, Giannis, as I recall, was it with pretty grainy cell phone footage.
Yeah, it was like
the gym in Greece, but at least they had it, right? Like, they could at
had
least see him
something.
play.
Yeah.
And a lot of this in the 90s was just like, you're going off of the word of scouts and people who have seen firsthand. And, you know, the Mavericks end up making that trade with the Bucks for tractor trailer on draft night, and the rest is history. But it's interesting to consider just how much of a risk it really was in 1998 to take a European-born player who had been playing his entire basketball career to that point in Europe, where just are kind of forced to guess.
Yeah, and he looked like a bust early on too. I mean, those first couple of years, you know, he looked a little shaky. Actually, mainly the first year, to be fair. But, like, you know, look like a guy like Lauri Markkanen or something, like who some people are saying is Dirk like. You know, his game is kind of Dirk like, and he had a pretty amazing rookie year. I think is this his second or third year? Let me check it. I think it's his third year this year. So he went from 15 points a game to 18 points a game. Now he's down to 14, and he's had a really off year this year. And some of that's the coaching. I don't know what it is, but
well, and I actually do think the way that guy plays, because that's the other thing too. Like, Dirk has yielded all of these incredibly lazy comparisons where it's like, is the guy from
big
a European
white guy
country,
with blonde hair,
6'10"? Okay, he's Dirk. And Markkanen, who is, I believe, Finnish, right?
He's a
Markkanen
Finn.
is someone, actually, when you watch him play, he's someone who's like, okay, this is actually he's not as good as Dirk, and I wouldn't bet on him ever being anywhere near as good as Dirk at this point, but, like, I can understand how you get the comparison, right?
Yeah.
Like you're saying, it's not just, oh, you're not American, so therefore you're Dirk.
Yeah, no, it's almost too easy, but my point was that I think that, you know, it kind of matters where you go too. And, like, he went to a great system with Don Nelson. It was perfect for him. Like, and that's why they drafted him, to be fair. I mean, they drafted him because they envisioned him in this role. And also he just had a really unique skill set for his size. But if Markkanen, you know, goes to, if he goes to the Mavericks now, even, you know, with Rick Carlisle, same coach as they had with Dirk, who's an offensive mastermind, or they go, you know, to Golden State, who goes to the Golden State Warriors, or, you know, his career, you know, I'm not saying it would be Dirk like at all, but, you know, he could look like a like a homeless man's version of Dirk, possibly.
Yeah.
I just think Dirk fell into a really good situation,
He
and
did, and he did, and yet the kind of double-edged sword of that, or not double-edged sword, but the other side of that, I feel like, is yes, he did, and yet we also have to give him credit for making that situation good, right? Because
for sure,
the Mavericks sucked, and I'm thinking about it through as you're talking now. I'm thinking through my head, like, who are the guys in the last 20 years, like in the span of Dirk's career, who you could really say helped define and reinvent a franchise in terms of what the franchise was and then what it became with this single player. And I think, to me, you can tell me who I should add here, but the first players that come to mind really are Dirk with the Mavs, Duncan with the Spurs, no disrespect to the Admiral, Wade with the Heat, and I guess LeBron with the Cavs. But what separates Dirk and I guess Steph, you can put Steph in there too. But what separates Dirk and Duncan is just that they did it for 20 years with one team.
Yeah,
you think about
that's
that.
a good
and
list of players right there.
How many players get the chance? I mean, someone like Kobe, like, no, the Lakers were already the Lakers, right?
Michael Jordan.
No, well, yes, sure, Michael Jordan, but not the last 20 years, right?
No,
but
of course not.
Yeah, of course, Jordan is like number one on the list. But you think about that recent NBA and who can make that claim, and it's like it's a handful of players, and he's on the list. And when you're talking about him and trying to put him in the pecking order, the fact that he ends up on these short lists so often makes it pretty hard to deny to me that he's, in that upper echelon, right? Not top 10 all time. I'm not saying that, but I would say very, very confidently in the top 20.
Well, it's a good place to leave it, man. I'm with you. I need to look at the list, but it sounds right to me. It's reasonable.
One thing, can you you need the last word on Dirk here. Give me your best Dirk memory, and I think we should leave it there.
Best Dirk memory.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be that 48-point game against the Thunder. I remember it really well. The free throw shooting we've talked about, but just they send poor Nick Collison, man. They send Nick Collison getting torched. You got Serge Ibaka doing his best, but it was like it's really a rare thing, even in the NBA, to see a guy that locked in, that he was just in fuego, well beyond the free throw line, inside the 3-point line, fadeaways, just turnarounds, just these huge rainbow, beautiful jump shots. He was pulling out the one-legged knee in the guy's balls shot where he fades back, and he had the full repertoire, and it was just amazing to behold. It's just it's just a legendary player rising above everybody else. Not to sound too hyperbolic, but he was just so fun to watch in that series. And usually I don't talk about free throw shooting as some kind of entertaining, sexy thing, but the fact that he didn't miss any free throws and he shot 24 of them was really gaudy. And he killed them. He just fouled guys out. He was going to the line constantly. They couldn't stop him. He controlled the whole game, even though he wasn't dishing a lot of assists and he wasn't getting tons of rebounds. He just was this, magnetic force that was just taking up so much space and taking up so much attention. And as we've talked about, the other guys worked perfectly off of him. And that's my main memory. But there's some other ones in there, like that game against Nash in the playoffs where they both put up crazy gaudy numbers.
Yep.
Wish I had those numbers in front of me, but Nash had, as I said, 48-point triple-double. Dirk had 38 or 45 or some crazy. So there's a lot of those games with Nash.
Is there one basket that he made that sticks out?
Not really, man. I mean, I was just trying to think. Like, I think it's just that it's not his like classic, like, one-legged shot that I was talking about with the knee up. But like he always, especially with Nash, he would be the last guy trailing. So he got that top of the key 3-pointer was like a classic, like Sam Perkins style, big guy, just kind of the last guy to get there. And it was just such a odd thing to have this big guy who would just stop at the top of the key back then. Now it's a little more common, but like, I think just instinctually, the other center, the other guy guarding him would just not think to guard him there, because like that person usually is thinking about playing defense or, doing something else, rotating, and like not thinking about the big guy would just stop at the 3-point line. Like that's insane. Like doesn't make any sense. But I can't tell you how many times he would do that and how many times it would just fool the other team. So that was like, I just remember that. And it was the kind of shot where like they were up by 7 in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left. And then he would hit one of those and they go up by 10. And it was just, it's such a back-breaking shot because it's minimal effort for him to do it. He's just catching the ball and shooting from, it's like a flick of the wrist. He's a gigantic man. Like there's no exertion, but it's so deadly. It's such a net positive play for the offense when you have a big guy or anybody who can shoot from that distance. And I think that's kind of like, that's what I remember him most, but I don't remember one shot just off the top of my head. It's hard to think of just one shot.
Yeah. I mean, that you were surprised though, really, when that shot didn't go in, where he could step into it in transition. I just expected it to go in. And really,
Nash used to do that too. Like, no, exactly.
Oh yeah.
Like Nash would on the fast break would just pull up for 3, top of the key.
And you just assumed he was making it. I think that's the best place to end because that is really the place where the fingerprints of Don Nelson on Dirk and on his career and on the entire NBA revolution, offensive revolution down into D'Antoni really matters. Is just the idea that so many of Dirk's shots like that were in transition, and the defense just didn't have time to set up. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't guard him in the half court anyway, but you definitely couldn't guard him when it was in transition. Like the idea that a 7-foot guy can just step into a shot running the length of the floor and hit it is just like it's no surprise to see why he had such gaudy averages the way that he did.
Yeah, and if he played today, he would have even better stats because he would just be running, he'd get the ball, shoot a 3, or he would just catch the ball and he could shoot over anybody. It's like Durant. Like I think the Durant comparison is a good one because they have different games, but they both can get a shot over anybody. And like that's it's such a deadly weapon. And man, the Don Nelson residue is over everything. / D'Antoni. Don't forget him. But it was a pleasure, man. Great talk.
Yeah, loved it.
We'll do another one soon.
Dirk forever.
Dirk forever. Dirkenstein.
See ya.
See you, buddy. Bye-bye.
So Gaudy. So Gaudy. Gaudy stats. Gaudy stats. Gaudy stats.